I am frustrated because at the moment I don't think there's any obvious choice on what 3D printer brand I can recommend for you to buy. But do you agree? Join me as we critique the current offerings. I've made 3D printer buyer's guides before, but this video is a little bit different. Currently, it's hard to know what to recommend to those who ask my advice about which 3D printer to buy. So let's jump in and examine the options that are currently available using my own first-hand experience, the stories of my patrons, and what you share in community groups. We're going to start our analysis with Bambu Lab. And when the X1 Carbon was launched, it was very disruptive to the existing hobby 3D printer market. We had a slick looking machine with next to no setup or assembly. It was smart enough to self-calibrate and had a myriad of sensors to hold the user's hand through normal procedures. And if something did go wrong, like me here forgetting to top up the bed glue, it was smart enough to pause the print, warn the user, and if necessary, guide them to a wiki for self-help. More importantly, out of the box, this printer was way faster with great quality compared to all but the most tuned hobby machines. And with the AMS, multi-material and multicolor printing were suddenly within reach for the average user who wasn't looking to tinker to achieve this. There were definitely compromises with this approach, but as a package with its fully featured slicer, including ready-to-go filament profiles, and features we expect from other appliances like a live webcam feed and mobile app, a user with little to no experience in 3D printing was able to get excellent results. Following on from this were the P series, and then the two A series models, which offered the same experience with reduced cost, further broadening the Bambu Lab appeal. In short, these printers just worked. It didn't require you to learn how to compile firmware. In fact, anything like that was either automated or intuitive. With these 3D printing results and user experience, as you might expect, the popularity of Bambu Lab exploded. But that's not to say that Bambu Lab printers were for everyone, because they bucked the trend of home 3D printing being open source, the only open source component being Bambu Studio, which was after some delay revealed to be a fork of the very popular Prusa slicer. So in stepped the community, with Soft Fever making a fork of Bambu Studio called Orca Slicer, and then the X1 Plus team jailbreaking the X1 Carbon and offering a more open source firmware for that. Furthermore, third-party manufacturers like Big Tree Tech released a range of add-ons for Bambu Lab printers like the Panda Touch. The printers were still closed source, but they felt less corporate and more community oriented with these mods. And then, with the giant cannon, Bambu Lab shot themselves in the foot with their security-focused firmware updates, including authorization control. At the start of the year, I made a whole video about this. I tried to avoid drama and stick to facts, which means months later that video is still accurate. Since then, the H2D new flagship has been released, and surprise surprise, it doesn't have lockdown filament, doesn't require a subscription to use, or any of the other things the most negative people said would definitely happen following the security updates. For me, the biggest problem is 7.4, which still says that new print jobs could be disabled if the firmware isn't updated to the latest version, but I still hope that's the nuclear option if a critical security vulnerability is found and users need to be protected. Only time will tell. What actually has happened is that for the X1 Carbon, the new firmware with the security features has been released, and as anticipated, this has greatly reduced third-party options. Bambu Connect is still in beta. It functions, but it's pretty clunky compared to connecting natively through Orca Slicer. For those on the new firmware, they've also lost access to print farm management software, as well as Home Assistant dashboards, so again a step backwards. And of course, the H2D, being a new printer, already comes with this security-enhanced firmware. You can import the H2D profile from a 3MF into Orca Slicer, but as soon as you try to slice, you'll get errors because the G-code variables for the H2D are in Bambu Studio but are not yet available in Orca Slicer. There's a request for H2D support in Orca, but the devs are yet to respond. And for me that's hardly a surprise, because it seems like the Bambu Lab developers are making life hard for those trying to collaborate. So moving forward, Bambu Lab printers are becoming more closed source and more locked into their own ecosystem, which Bambu Lab probably like. Now the H2D in my testing so far does print quite well, but I think it's fair to say it's more of an evolution than a revolution. And by that I mean it's hardly innovative. Take for instance its signature feature, the switching dual extruders and hot ends. Myself, and no doubt others, have covered systems like this years ago, and it's hard to shake the feeling that Bambu Lab primarily refine ideas already out in the community without giving back because they remain closed source. And here's the thing that some people really struggle to understand. The average person does not care about open source. When I donate a 3D printer, people don't stop to check whether that company is honoring the legacy of the RepRap movement and whether they've published required files on GitHub or somewhere similar. When I made this video, there were some very vocal people upset that I didn't jump on the bandwagon and completely condemn Bambu Lab. But what those people need to understand, based on the 91.5% like ratio, most people are happy with the way Bambu Lab do things. So while Bambu Lab are taking steps to exclude the community and third-party developers, and Bambu Lab still has way too much reliance on the cloud when you're operating your printer locally, the majority of users won't care as long as they can print reliably. So for me, while Bambu Lab printers might be suitable for many users, it's harder for me to wholeheartedly recommend them given their recent actions. So that brings us to Prusa, who were the de facto JustWorks 3D printer manufacturer before Bambu Lab came along. And before we get to my criticisms of Prusa, it's only fair to point out a number of things they're still the leaders in. One area where Prusa excel is not leaving customers behind who have purchased older models. For instance, it's possible to take a much older printer, such as an i3 Mark III, upgrade it to a newer Mark IVs, and then from there, if you really like spending money, upgrade it to a Prusa Core 1. Prusa are excellent in providing spare parts for old and new machines alike, and for many of the parts, you can either purchase them online or print replacements yourself. And I still think Prusa leads the way when it comes to technical support. There's a large knowledge base online, and their 24/7 live web chat is industry leading, even though the wait times can be long sometimes. Prusa were also the first to provide a comprehensive ecosystem, including the fantastic Prusa Slicer, complete with a range of printer and material profiles ready to go. They also sell their own filament and other consumables, meaning you can get pretty much everything you need all from one place. Oh, and I still think their file sharing site printables is the leader in that category. So on paper, there's a lot to like about Prusa machines, so why aren't they the obvious recommendation? Firstly, the price, what is sometimes known as the Prusa tax. As Prusa printers are made in the EU, that should mean good conditions for the workers, but that means you will be paying more. For instance, their entry-level printer, the Mini, is $460 US. Compare that to Bambu Lab's equivalent, the A1 Mini, which is $200 US cheaper at $250 US. And even if you get the AMS combo, allowing you to print 4 filaments at once, you're still coming in $60 US cheaper. And if you go for their flagship, the XL, in top of the range 5-tool version, expect to pay over $4,000 US. And that's for the version without the enclosure, because if we add that, it's going to be an extra $420 US. Bambu Lab's flagship H2D isn't quite comparable in terms of features, but the most you can spend is still significantly less. Now let's talk about early adopters, and the first Prusa I purchased was the Mark III, and at a mature stage it was bulletproof and reliable. However, the Prusa Mini that I purchased as an early adopter seemed to be half-baked and plagued with issues, mainly related to an extruder design that was prone to jamming. And then again, more recently, when I purchased an XL flagship model, I was met with an even greater range of problems, such as layer shifts, excessive stringing, promised features not yet released, and parts of the firmware being disabled because there were too many bugs. Eventually, I was able to work on the machine and get it printing to meet my expectations, but based on my experiences, there's no way I could recommend a Prusa printer that had recently been released, particularly when I had to spend even more money to upgrade it to the latest spec that non-early adopters were receiving without additional cost. To me, the feel and interface of Prusa printers also feels a bit dated, a bit last gen. Prusa's native web interface is constantly improving, but I still felt the need to add Octoprint just to get a live webcam feed, like most other printers seem to have included for free these days. However, in fairness, some people will prefer that, as they'd rather have the privacy and security of their printer not being online at all. Finally, let's talk about open source, one of Prusa's big selling points. Historically, they have absolutely led the way in this department, but the truth is there are a lot of gaps in what has been published, especially for the newer printers. For instance, for the XL, we have a pretty low hit rate, and previously, if you wanted to flash custom firmware, you had to permanently break a seal on the mainboard, which is not exactly what I would describe as open. So in summary, Prusa machines have a lot of great selling points, but based on the reasons that I've just listed, they're definitely not a clear choice. So let's move on to non-Bambu Lab Chinese manufacturers, and I don't like lumping them all together, but I think the trend is pretty clear. Let's be honest here, I built much of my channel's popularity on making guides for how to get the best out of these cheap Chinese machines. And that's because what they offer is what I think is fair to describe as compromised value. Let me explain with some examples, starting with the Creality K2 Plus, which I recently reviewed. When it came to printing PLA, the K2 Plus was simply outstanding. Most of the time when I tried to print PETG, however, the printers extruded would jam. And when it came to printing TPU, the reliability was even worse. All I can say is that due to a lack of testing or development, there's a fundamental flaw with the extruder design that makes it quite unreliable. Now clearly, this printer is a clone of the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon, although it offers good value because it has a much larger build volume for a similar price. And in some ways, it was actually superior to the Bambu Lab printer, but then in others, it really let itself down, including unknown firmware bugs that Creality couldn't put their finger on, and sloppiness, like the QR codes leading to the Chinese version of the wiki, despite the printer being set to English. Let's look at another example, the Servol SV08, which is a clone of the Voron 2. Now the one I received was not one of the earliest models, and that means a bunch of the initial problems had already been rectified. But it still came with significant issues, like the more expensive upgraded touchscreen option not actually fitting on the printer, and a bastardized version of the Clipper firmware that had changes made so it couldn't actually be updated, prompting a complete redo to get it working as it should. This is another Chinese printer that offers value but with compromise because corners have been cut. Recently I made a video on 3D printer fires and I was pointed to this horrible Reddit post from Progress Local 1511 where a Chititech Plus 4 had caught on fire and destroyed their house. Now I haven't used this printer, but browsing through and following a link to another thread on the side, it seems that there's a critical safety problem on machines running on 120 volts. This is both in the choke coils as well as the SSR. Now this is the extreme example of when corners are cut and the product is severely compromised. Finally, let's look at the experience of my patron Derek, who was tempted by an Anycubic Cobra 1 when it went on sale. The price was then dropped even further, so he made the choice to pull the trigger on the purchase. The printer arrived and his initial impressions were quite positive. But even so, Derek's attention quickly turned to printing upgrades and modifications. There were some strange bugs and mishaps that took some time and effort to get on top of, and functional upgrades were required to get the best out of the Ace Pro. But perhaps the biggest change was Derek upgrading to a custom community firmware. This opened up the software that could be used, including better integration with Orca Slicer and giving more access to their version of Clipper. This is a great example of why I call this category compromised value, because the purchase price was cheap, but there were issues that Derek, as an experienced 3D printer and tinkerer, was easily able to overcome. After these upgrades, Derek is happy with the printer, but it's definitely not just works and beginners may struggle. In fact, Derek himself said although he's happy with the printer, he would not recommend it to a new user of 3D printers. So that leaves one category that I am in fact quite happy to recommend, but unfortunately most people won't be interested in. And that is premium do-it-yourself machines. Probably the most well-known option here are the printers from Voron Design, and they're not even a company that looks to profit. They're a group of engineers collaborating together to try and produce the best designs possible. Each of these printers are open source, and you can choose to follow the guidelines provided, or you can vary your build with either your own remix or one from the community. And there's plenty of other options alternative to Voron in this category, like this Ratrig VCore 3 that I built up in a playlist linked below in the description, and the second, a SecKit SK Tank, which I also built up in a playlist covered on this channel. Both of these printers I'm extremely happy with. The print quality is fantastic and the print speed is just as good. In fact, including myself, I've yet to meet anyone who was unhappy with and regretted one of these premium do-it-yourself 3D printers. So on paper, this option seems pretty ideal. We have high-performing printers, quite often with cutting-edge features, a strong community, and the opportunity to customize. Furthermore, these designs are built on open source collaboration, so what's not to like? Well, the clue is right in the word I keep using, and that's build. You have to build these printers yourself from scratch. Typically, that means researching, buying and then waiting for all of the electronics and hardware, manufacturing yourself all of the printed components, and obviously that's going to be hard if it's your first 3D printer, potentially manufacturing or paying someone else to manufacture for you other components like enclosures and panels, and finally, once all of that prep is done, the actual assembly can begin. Beyond bolting things together, you still need to spend plenty of time making sure everything is square and true, but then after that there's all of the wiring, which often involves crimping your own connectors, followed by setting up the firmware and coming up with a printer configuration, followed by testing, checks, and calibrating a print profile in your slicer. Now personally, as a tinkerer, I found this whole process very enjoyable, and I know I'm not alone with this, but I also know that this whole process is simply too intimidating and becomes an instant deal breaker for those who want a 3D printer as a tool instead of a project. So I would say, if you're considering one of these builds and can afford it, go right ahead. Because by building everything yourself, you'll know the printer inside and out, and you will form a deep bond with it that will make you love it even more. However, if you're not committed and confident, then I would say it's probably best to stay away, lest you end up with a project that never gets finished and clogs up your makerspace collecting dust. And that's why we have another category that I personally like, but I can't recommend to everyone. That's my 2 cents, but as always, I'm more interested in yours. Please head to the comment section and tell me, do you agree? And is there any option that I've missed? Thank you to my patrons for assisting with the video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy 3D printing.
G'day, it's Michael again. If you like the video, then please click like. If you want to see more content like this in future, click subscribe and make sure you click on the bell to receive every notification. If you really want to support the channel and see exclusive content, become a patron. Visit my Patreon page. See you next time.